Let Garmin show you how to replace the coil cable on the force trolling motor. For this process, you will need a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver, a 3mm hex bit driver, 2 4mm hex bit drivers or Allen wrenches, a 10mm socket, a socket wrench, a torque wrench, and pliers. For this install, the trolling motor will be stowed and deployed. Make sure you have room on the vessel for these actions. First, disconnect the trolling motor from power. Then, remove the 4 screws holding the shaft cap using a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Lift and remove the top of the shaft cap. Disconnect the data connector within the shaft cap. Now remove the 2 screws holding the positive and negative wires using a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Next, using pliers, remove the washer holding the cable to the shaft cap. Then, remove the cable clips holding the transducer cable and coil cable together. Keep these in a safe place. They will be used again. Remove the coil cable from the shaft cap. Now deploy the trolling motor. Using a 3mm hex bit driver, remove the 2 cable clips holding both the power and transducer cables to the mount. Remove the power and transducer cable from the cable channel. Next, remove the top pivot pin screw and washer using 2 4mm hex bit drivers. Be careful when removing the pin as the trolling motor will swing forward. Now remove the 9-pin data cable attached to the e-box. Pivot the upper link away from the steering servo housing. Remove the bracket that secures the power cable to the steering servo housing using a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Next, pull the rubber shields away from the power cable connectors. Using a 10mm socket, remove the nuts and washer that secures the power cable connectors. Remove the power cable from the steering servo housing. Using a 4mm hex bit driver, remove the 3 screws that secure the coil cable block to the steering servo housing. Pull the coil cable block away from the steering servo housing to remove it. The coil cable block connects to the PCB in the steering servo housing. When removing the block, take care to avoid damaging the connector on the PCB. Remove the coil cable. Please keep note of the amount of coils your trolling motor coil has. Now, take the new coil cable and place the coil cable block over the connector on the steering servo housing and push it into place. Take care to avoid damaging the connector. Next, insert and tighten the 3 screws to secure the coil cable block to the steering servo housing using a 4mm hex bit driver. Using the torque wrench, torque the 3 screws to 17 inch-pounds. Next, take the power cable and pull the rubber shields away from the power cable connectors. Place the power cable connectors over the bolts on the steering servo housing, with the red cable on the bottom right positive terminal and the black cable on the upper left negative terminal. Now install the nuts and washers that secure the power cable connectors using a 10mm socket. Tighten the nuts to 60 inch-pounds using a 10mm torque wrench. Pull the rubber shields down to cover the power cable connectors. Next, install the rubber gasket around the power cables. Then, install the 2 screws to the bracket that secures the power cable to the steering servo housing using a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Next, pivot the upper link to the steering servo housing. Then reconnect the 9-pin data cable to the e-box. Align the steering servo motor with the upper links. Push the pin through the holes on the upper link of the mount and the steering servo housing. Now secure the pin using the screws and washers on both sides using two 4mm hex bit drivers. Then take the transducer cable and power cable and feed them through the channel on the side of the mount. Next, place both cable clips over the transducer and power cable. Secure the cable clips with the two screws using a 3mm hex bit driver. Then, stow the trolling motor. Now, take the coil cable and wrap the cable the appropriate amount of times to the shaft. Then insert the cables into the bottom of the shaft cap. Insert the plastic nut or the nut provided with the replacement coil cable. Then use an adjustable wrench to secure the coil cable connector to the shaft cap. Align the rings on the ends of the cables according to color. You must stack the red cables together and stack the black cables together, aligning the flat sides of the connectors on the cables. Place the stacked cables over the standouts in the shaft cap. Install the two screws and lock washers to secure the power cables onto the standouts in the shaft cap using a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Then align both sections of the data cable connector and push together to connect them. Place the lid on the shaft cap. Now install the 4 screws to secure the lid to the shaft cap using a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Place the cable clips back on to hold the transducer cable and the coil cable together. Finally, connect the trolling motor back to power and test your trolling motor. And that's it. Thanks for watching. For more help, please subscribe to the Garmin Support YouTube channel and visit marinesupport.garmin.com.